Alrighty, welcome everyone. Please. There we go. Please go ahead and drop in the chat box where you're logging in from today. This ILCA is a very global organization, and that's one of our favorite things to do. That's one of our favorite things. Oh, Berlin, we were just talking about Berlin.
Well, who's from Berlin? John, hello. Nice to meet you. Oh, yeah.
Beautiful train rides in and out of Berlin.
Yeah.
Gabriella, I have pinned you. Okay, so.
You have pinned me. Wonderful. It feels very nice, actually. Yes.
Yeah, to be pinned. All right. Just let me know whenever. Oh, we've got more people coming in here. Romania, Scotland, Zurich.
Oh, wow. Lovely.
Vienna, Budapest, Milan. Very European crew here today. Love it. Very cool.
Very nice.
Arlington. Okay. Hi, Carolyn. Hi, Kathy. Great to see everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Gabriella, do you want me to go ahead and just get started and hand it over to you?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. Well, it is my immense honor and pleasure to present to you Miss Gabriella Kovács, who is a co-founder of the International Language Coaching Association. She is a certified language coach. She is a teacher trainer. She is many amazing things as a contributor and a pioneer in the field of language coaching. And she's here today to talk about corporate language coaching and communication coaching and this type of thing. So thank you so much, Gabriella, for doing this talk. We are so very lucky to have you each month in this Expert 2021 series. We have a different expert that comes to this with their own particular experience in their field. And Gabriella is one of the most experienced language coaches that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting or working with. She works with very large corporations in a pure language coaching capacity, as well as this like mixed coaching training type of thing. So you're in very good hands for this subject, and I can't wait to watch it.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I think you've got carried away a little bit, but I mean, thank you anyway.
My name, Carrie. Carried away.
Yeah. So wonderful to be here. I know that it's probably summer for the majority of you here, and so I already feel really honored that you're here despite, you know, summer breaks and vacations, etc. I only just arrived yesterday from Prague, and so excuse my throat. I've got a slightly sore throat as a result of that, probably. But I will go ahead and I'm going to start. When you read the description of what I'd be talking about, I mentioned that I'd be talking through presenting one of the case studies that I've been working on. And I was thinking of talking about a number of case studies and just running through them. And as I was sifting through my notes with various clients that I've been working with in the past 1 or 2 years, I decided on one which is quite a recent acquisition, so to say, and we just finished our process last week. And it's been one of the most successful in terms of the impact of the coaching and the results also. So there's a very high return on interest for the corporation that was the stakeholder in this process, language coaching process. And I'll be telling you the details about it in a minute. Before we go on, I just have to say that this case study is being presented with the consent, the verbal consent of the client. So it's ethically correct to do this sort of thing. The name of the company, the name of the client is not going to be obviously mentioned. And I'm going to be using some slides which, when I work with clients, I usually write up some of the things that that we mention, and I send the slides or the notes that I write up to the client so that they can look through them and reflect a little bit on what's been happening in the process for that day, for that week for them. And I've been using some of those, which I'm going to be presenting here. Some of them I haven't really changed, so there might be one or two, misspellings or mistakes, or I wrote down something verbatim, which means that I didn't change anything. This is how the client said it. So you're going to see those, and you don't have to get your teaching hat on and, oh, there's a mistake. And so that's totally okay as it is. So before I jump into it, this lady is the country leader for a big multinational company. And I'm certain that the products that this company produces is probably in your household right now. So it's that kind of, these are the kinds of brands that they produce. They're all over the world, everywhere. And she was asked to look for someone for an organization that can support her with her language learning issues. And she found Ilka, and she decided to work with us. And I'll just talk you through the steps that we went through. And at the end, I'll be very curious to know, it's going to be interactive all through, but I'll be very interested to know at the end what you think of the process, how you see it as a professional, as a practitioner yourself, and of course, what you have learned. So I'd encourage you to take notes, write down any questions that you have. There will be time for Q&A at the end. And I'll talk you through what we've been working on in the past. I think it was around 3 months. So it's a 3-month process that we've been working on. Okay, about we met once a week. So let's just jump into it. And initially, in the chemistry call, which is where we see whether we can work together or not and kind of get acquainted with each other, she brought up 3 basic items which she wanted to focus on. One thing was that she had some a specific business review that she needed to prepare for. This was a big professional event for her. I think these are twice or 3 times or once in a quarter for her company. And she needs to present in a very objective, clear manner. And it's something that is highly stressful for her and the other managers also, because all the large stakeholders, the management, which is at global level, are all there. And so, yeah, the stress is there. Also, she wanted to find out what kind of, how the colleagues would be seeing her as a communicator, as a language user. This is, by the way, the nationality of the lady is French, okay? So she was curious to get some kind of feedback somehow in some form from others. Another issue, and I don't think I'm saying anything new here, you've probably come across this sort of thing, when the language learner, whom I'm calling now the client because we're in a coaching relationship. So the client says that they don't really know what to do if something crops up unexpectedly, how to handle that in terms of communication, presence, and language. So these were the 3 initial things that she wanted to focus on. And as you see, as I talk you through, you're going to see that so many other things are going to be touched upon. Now, a teacher or a trainer might start looking at the language implications of this. Okay, so how to work with these. The second point is a bit of a struggle, because as a teacher, as a trainer, how do you help your learner, your client, to get feedback from others? So that's already quite a bit of a challenge with that kind of role. As we started working together, there were a number of other things which came up in the first so-called intake session, which is where we start talking. I'm trying to enter somebody. Carrie, can you get someone? So there was also some other issues which came up, which were And I'm just clicking madly here, sorry. So we've got transparency. So how you communicate that you have language issues with the people that you are working with. How you do that professionally, without losing face, without staying in control of the situation that you are in, and being very aware of the hierarchy within the corporation that you're working in. So that already raised quite a lot of issues. Can you please mute yourself? Then handling stress, of course, this is a very clear way of, it's something which crops up very often. Another thing, organizing thoughts. This might sound a bit bizarre, but we're going to see how this affects the whole coaching process actually. So if she is okay with how she organizes her thoughts, then that's going to impact on the way that she communicates her thoughts. Clarity. Clarity is also, I'd say it's one of the big four of the coaching issues that we generally have. Also, understanding others. So listening as a skill did come up, which initially was not really there. This is an interesting one. She wanted to change from queen of to, and we helped identify what she wanted to change. Now, this queen of is a kind of nickname that she gave herself because it was something that she frequently noticed she was doing. She was saying with a slight head nod and yeah, I got it, yeah, I'm okay, even when it wasn't okay. So she was going into this kind of not saying anything and acting as if everything is fine, even if something was not quite clear or not quite okay in the situation that she was in due to some sort of language issue. What she also wanted from the process was to strengthen her leadership role, which is something, if you think of your own experience as a teacher or a trainer, might not come up so very often. In coaching, there's always something additional, something overarching the whole process, which is to be gained from working with a coach. So what we can see is that the ones on the left side have been, I'm not saying transformed, but they have been, through the first conversation that I had with the client, we brought up these points that needed addressing. And so we started working on this page basically. And you're going to see as we go along in the process, we'll be addressing various areas and we'll be looking at how that comes up. Okay, I don't know, there might be someone who needs to mute themselves. Thank you. So moving on, we're going to be, with the client, we started working on how we could be understanding others and what kind of challenges can be faced. And I'd like you to think just for a very short minute what it means to understand someone. And we're going to look into what this meant for this particular client. Okay. So this issue, this agreeing even if not everything is clear, this is one of the ways that she overcomes the challenges when something is not clear. She just acts as if everything is clear. Situations where she wants to close the situation, wants to close the communication with the other party, or not go into explanation because she doesn't really understand them, or she's afraid of some sort of follow-up which she won't be able to handle. So basically cutting conversations short because of uncertainty. avoiding adding extra information, even if from a professional point of view, there could be something she could be adding, but because of the lack of courage or the inclination, because she doesn't know what sort of situation she'll be getting into, this could come up as an issue for her. What she also said is that if it's essential, she will clarify and she will add extra information. And I put an exclamation mark there because this was something that I challenged her with. In these situations, she would ask for a repeat. And I said to her, so this means that if it really is important to clarify something or to make something very clear because there's a misunderstanding, then you will actually go for it and ask a question or push for more information or add some more information. And she started thinking about it and said, well, you know what? Yeah, I think that's when I have to move forward and forget whether I've got courage or whether I have the words for it or what's going to happen, because it's so important that I move into that space. And that was a recognition point for her, that when it's absolutely essential, she will actually do what is necessary. But if the need is not so very strong, then she'll just kind of let it go. So that was an interesting point for her to think about. She also started asking questions like, why is it that she's against asking back, you know, if something is not clear or if she wants further information about something. And what she came up with is, for example, because she looks stupid. And I think if you've been following, you know, communication trends lately, this is something that very often comes up, that managers, leaders don't ask back because it might seem that they look inferior as opposed to leading and managing situations, which is expected of them. It's another thing to know that this is absolutely not true, but this is what they think, this is how they generally feel. So the to-do here was to ask the colleagues, 3 colleagues, for some feedback, to find out what has been noticed, what is going on, and then find out some kind of action plan or learning plan that we could be working on in the remaining 12, 13 hours that we'd be working together. Okay, so I gave her as a home assignment to put together the questions, and this is what she came up with. I think actually it wasn't a home assignment. I think we started working on it together, but it was completely client-led, so I did not add any input here. So I'm going to show you what she came up with, and I think it's quite genius. And it had a very, very strong boosting effect on her. And I've done this with a number of clients, and it's usually the same. So it helps them with their own self-image, how they see themselves and how others see themselves, so they can compare that. Very straightforward. First question, do you have any issues with my English? Do you realize sometimes I have issues to understand you? Meaning, do you realize that sometimes I don't understand everything that you say? Do you think sometimes I am unclear with my English? Could you be more specific and give examples? This is something that I cautioned her, because if people just give very general feedback, that's not going to actually add to her so that she can move forward with it. How would you describe my communication skills? How efficient do you rate the way I present things, the way I communicate? Yeah, this is the language that I said is not 100%, but we can understand, I think, what she wants to say. What advice would you give me to be more assertive? So here something comes up which is coming from the deep, so to say, so it's about being assertive. She also wanted to ask her HR manager where the idea came from, for her to have some kind of language coaching or some kind of language process. She was curious to know. So these are the questions that she came up with. And I said, okay, so how do you want to execute this? What's going to be the plan for sending out these? And once again, as a coach, I cannot expect anything and I can't act on expectations. But I presumed she would say, well, I send them an email with this and then wait for the answers. This is usually what happens. Now, this lady, she has an amazing character. And she said, okay, well, first of all, I'm going to, and she put this down and I just typed it up. Choose the right people across the various contexts and situations. So she already had some people in mind and she wanted a variety of colleagues that she could get information from so that the information would be as varied as possible. Second would be providing reasons for this. So it's not enough to send an invite, but also to explain what is in the background. So to explain that she's in a coaching process, to be transparent with the people she would be involving. Either they would be replying in email if they're very busy, or asking for a one-to-one interview where they could explain and she could take notes. And in the end, I think she sent it out to 4 managers or 4 colleagues of hers, and they all replied, which is a big thing. And 2 were interviews and 2 were via email. So it was a 50-50. Number 3, compose the text for the invite. Send the questions in the invite so that they can prepare for it. So if it's a verbal, if it's a conversation, they would have time to prepare. Build on the feedback to improve. And the reaction was to stay positive. I'm just thinking what this was about. To stay positive, I am prepared to learn. I want to use open questions. This was her thinking about how she would like to approach with it. Step 6 was whether to record these or not, and I think she decided not to record the conversations, but to take notes. Step 7 was to compare the notes, so the 4 colleagues that she would be getting feedback from, and to make a summary of them. And point 8 would be to share with me and clarify what to work on, which we did do. And it was very eye-opening for her for a number of reasons. Most important thing was that the overall feedback on her English was that her English skills are very good. Surprise, surprise. And they gave her very specific pieces of information on what she might be working on, what her strengths are, what could be developed further, and what kind of situations they see her as brilliant, and what situations there are where she could be working a little bit harder on certain aspects of her communication. So it was a very rewarding process, and we're just at the beginning. We're in session 3, I think, and we still had about 6 or 7 sessions to go. The next thing that we started looking at is what kind of communication skills she has. So I'm going to be talking you through. This is also something that came up in the next session. 2 languages, 2 mindsets. So in French, she's a different person, and in English, she's a different person. And I asked her to collect what it is that is different for her in the 2 languages, and let's have a conversation about how that's different. So in French, she says she uses simple sentences, knows exactly what she wants to say, and she can put her thoughts in order. So there's no kind of confusion or mixing things, going round and round in circles. She allows her creativity to flow. And the interactivity is very high, so she does ask more when she's communicating in French. Excuse me. She keeps the interest high and connects with the audience. Now, audience doesn't always mean a huge big presentation, but it could be the people that she's talking with, okay? Now, what about in English? Let's have a look at that. We think that it's going to be exactly the opposite, not necessarily, but there will be some differences. I overcomplicate to compensate for a number of things. For example, if she can't find the word, then she's going to be extra sure that she's saying exactly the same thing with at least 20, 30 other words, which might not necessarily be needed, but that's how she would compensate in that situation. And of course, what happens is that she would lose the thread and it would be quite difficult to come back. She doesn't always say things in the right order. We're not talking about sentence word order here. We're talking about the logical build-up of the text, the structuring of how she wants to message towards the people that she's talking with. What she realizes at this point is that she's missing the linking words, those typical panels, the signposting, which when we're working with someone on presentation language, meetings language, are essential. She needs those so that they can help not only the people she's talking with, but also herself, so that she can organize her thinking. So this, again, this was a huge, big breakthrough point for her to recognize what it is that's missing, that's holding her back from being able to communicate at least as effectively as she is in French. In terms of creativity, she said she's okay. She doesn't see any difference or anything which would be affecting her not being creative in English or being less so than in French. What she did notice, however, and we've touched upon this earlier, is that she's less likely to interact, to be proactive with the people that she's communicating with. She just wants to get it over and done with and then move on. So that's something that comes up. And of course, it's connected also with keeping the interest, the connection with the audience. She said it was okay, but of course, things always come up. So there's always room for improvement. Now, what other things came up? Oh, we've got something there which should not be there. I'm sorry. We looked at 3 different areas. The first one was language, which for her, we took a long list of what aspects of language would be important for her. And these are 4 areas that she definitely wanted to focus on. How she would be pacing, pausing, using rhythm in her speech. How she could build up a logical structure. How she could be focusing on the formality, the level of formality of the language that she uses, how that impacts on the directness of her language, and also bringing in those linking words, also focusing a bit more on idioms, which she knows she needs to be working on. Excuse me. Also looking at some subjective areas, for example, how to hold attention, what kind of body language, physical attributes she might need to focus a little bit more on to be more assertive, to bring in a little more power and showing that kind of leadership that she really wants to have shined through in a way in her communication in English. Also, there was a specific situation with a manager, I think at the same level of her in the hierarchy, but physically in a different location, in a different city. For a certain situation, she said that she felt that her credibility was quite low because she didn't really understand the technical background to the issues they needed to find solutions to. And that was something where she wanted her language to be, her communication to be different so that she could address this kind of handicap still in a managerial way. Also, she said she thinks she needs to get her active listening a bit better, but of course she wasn't really sure whether that was something that she wasn't quite clear what active listening was. Okay, so there's a question mark there, but she thought it was something that would be interesting and connected to listening in some sort of way. And here's the last one. Objective things like working on what the clarity of an unexpected, spontaneous bit of communication should be like, how she should stay present with the audience, these functional panels that she should be using, how she could bring those in, working on interruption, for example, these typical Q&A sort of situations. And once again, she said that she would be she would like to work on her intonation, which actually by the end of our coaching, a large number of these did actually change, and they did move forward on a scale of 1 to 10, at least 1 or 2 notches. So that was definitely something which I could quite easily notice, that there was a change in all of these. She was much more relaxed and assuring, when she was communicating. Now, what is it that we looked at? This actually was one of the biggest breakthrough moments for her. We were talking about what it means to be communicating with clarity. And you can see a blank at the moment, but actually on the other side, there was also something very exciting, which I scribbled down as she was talking. Something very visual came to me, and I just shared it with her on, I was using Zoom, and in screen share, I shared with her what came to my mind with the whiteboard function. And I said, so what we're talking about, in a way, is when you disagree with somebody, you want to actually come up with the reason for the disagreement that you have, and to try and also reason with the person. So 2 things. Another thing which is important is if you have a proposal, then you also will want to come up with a reason for it. So it's not enough to say, this is what I want to do. You're going to have to, in a way, structure what you're talking about. And this is as opposed to the kind of communication that she generally had, which is what we called storytelling. And as she was talking to me about how she usually communicates in English, this came up for me. So she starts from A, and she kind of talks through things, going to the left, going to the right, going in all kinds of directions, and then finally kind of coming to what she actually wants to say. But by then, of course, you've got so much information and you've completely lost what the direction is. And in contrast, moving very clearly from one side to the other, having a sort of frame. I mean, obviously you can change disagree and proposal to anything else. So it's just 2 functions that we zoomed in on. But these are issues which are important for the client. And she said that this was one of the most important realizations for her, that actually, yes, what she's doing is on the right side of the screen, and what she wants to be focusing on is what is on the left side. So finding the most direct way to say what she wants, to state her intent, and then come up with the reasoning, come up with the reasons for that to, in a way, support her statement. Okay, so this was something that was a big eye opener for her. Now, another thing, again, that we focused on was how she could be working with her leadership. And we've got color coding here. What you will see here is the yellow is the biggest. The expectations, her perfection, that's the big thing that's the dinosaur in the room, or the elephant, or whatever you want in the room. And the smaller ones, the tan or orange colors, are of smaller significance. And the red ones are also on alert for her. That's also something she needs to be focusing on. So I'll just give you a minute to look at that, and then I'd move forward, okay, so that we can, I see that we're on schedule, but I'd like to move forward with things. So these are things that, for example, this slide, for us to put this together, we were collaborating, co-creating here. This took us about 20 minutes. This was a 20-minute conversation to see what was going on here. And we started with a blank page. So we build the content, what she wants to be working on, always with a different way of approaching it. And she comes up with these. And we're going deeper and deeper into the issues that are actually at the core of her communication issues. So moving on, we also looked at what attributes leadership has, and we came up with the following, which were important for her: creativity, self-directedness, focus, having a focus, being inspired, but also inspiring others, so bidirectionally. Also possessing the expertise and the mastery with which they can actually lead. Being resourceful, being insightful, and being committed to what they're working on and the people that they are working with, and also the organization that they are working for. So there are three things there. And also being non-judgmental and objective in their approach. This is the second time this has come up, and no accident. This is something that is going to be more and more obvious as we move on in the process, that being objective as opposed to the storytelling and the going left and right and all over the place, and zooming and focusing and creating a distance between who you are, what you are, and how you communicate towards other people. That's going to gain in prominence as we move along. Now, something very exciting, and I'm going to ask you here to be a little bit interactive. Okay, we're going to get more and more interactive as we move on today. Challenges speaking with native speakers, and of course we've got the iceberg metaphor here, and I challenge you to drop into the chat box. I don't know, Carrie, whether you can be checking them for me. What you think this is about. Why did I bring this into the process, and how do you think I use the iceberg metaphor? Okay, so if you've got any ideas, just throw it into the chat box and let's see, and then I'll tell you what I did with it. Once again, with the client, I just brought this in and I said, okay, so what do you think this is about? I can see one thing there.
Got, yeah, cultural differences came in.
Okay, thank you.
Accents, brainstorming, storytelling, bring on deeper waters.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, let's have a look. Okay, and see whether you were right. Okay. On the top, what we had was, she said, well, what people see is that I seem okay when I'm communicating, which is true. The other thing that I see things are coming in, but we're going to have to wait till the end. Okay, so I'm going to move up here. What helps and what is my responsibility for things to really be okay is, in the shorter term, to let go of a lot of things. So to accept that 80% is okay, 100% is, maybe she's going to reach it at some point, but pursuing that constantly is just going to cause a lot of frustration for her. Not to hesitate to ask, to communicate at the beginning of a meeting or during a meeting that, sorry, this is not clear. Can you please repeat that, because I'm not clear on what that is. And not being afraid of, being looked upon as stupid or, oh, she's the French woman who doesn't understand anything. So nothing of that, but being very clear and concise and communicating about their communication. Creating awareness towards the audience. Longer term, what is important for her to develop her language, of course, is, for example, the usual things, okay, listening to podcasts, BBC, whatever, mini holiday walks, walking around with, with the earphones or earplugs, whatever, and just listening to something in English, and working on expectations that she has regarding herself, regarding language goals. So reflecting on how she is as a language learner, and also looking at what kind of communication strategies specifically she needs to be developing in the future. What we also had, okay, is what goes unseen, of course, is that actually I don't understand everything. I'm capturing just enough sometimes in meetings, and this causes stress, even health issues. Yes, she did disclose some personal stuff. And she needs to work on what her expectations are for perfect. Yeah, probably the order was not correct, so I'm sorry about that. But I think you kind of get the picture of what this iceberg wants to say. Carrie, is there anything here which we need to share in the chat box?
Well, some things came in: observable behavior versus values. We also had shared cultural or linguistic knowledge that may not be stated. Assumptions that are usually deep, and learning to decipher a continuum of being realistic towards unrealistic.
Very good, very nice, thank you. Okay, I think we'll type that up also, okay, at the end. Okay, so moving on, I'll just share what kind of conclusions we came up with. And what we see is her reflecting on this iceberg, on the sessions that we've had. What goes unseen? I don't understand all. We're still in this iceberg. I capture just enough, and this causes stress, and my expectations about being perfect. For example, if the theme is very specialized or niche, then I feel that I'm not the expert in the field. The impact of this is I don't ask, okay? So I've got a self-image thing going on. I can, or I might miss something important. Sometimes there's some written notes, but that's not too often. The impact is on me, and it puts stress on me. This was also a recognition point for her, to understand that the impact is going to be on her. It's not impacting the others, actually, it's impacting her. Feedback that she usually gets is that it's great, yeah, it's fine, the meeting was good. And what she wants to be looking at is that there are many forms of positive recognition, because as she's a perfectionist, or can be a perfectionist, it's very important for her to get good feedback, but it's not enough to just be great or positive. What she wants is to be getting more specific feedback. And we had a longer conversation here, what it means to be recognized. And she actually realized that the fact that she has been moving forwards in her career ladder is one type of recognition. The other type of recognition is B and C and D. So actually there are a lot of signs across the board that she's being recognized and accepted in her various capacities, roles. But it's not in the form of you are doing a great job and wonderful, etc. But actually it's more of action-based feedback and not so much, verbal recognition. It's more about, the business results and the feedback that receives, and not specifically personal feedback that she gets. What she also realized is that this kind of recognition is important, because if she doesn't get it, then she doesn't feel okay. So that's actually where there's some work to be done. So one outcome of this conversation was that she will ask for some feedback and to be coached by the external site manager on the technical, various issues that she needs to be, so that she will feel equal to that person. And this is, for me, this was a very genuine opening up of accepting that in order to be better, you can ask for help and it won't weaken you. So this was a huge, big step for her to recognize that in certain situations, if you want to be better with your communication, you can reach out for help to others and your position is still going to be intact. You will not be questioned as a manager, as a leader. In fact, it's going to enhance your position most probably. And I put arrows here and I forgot to put them. So there are the arrows. Great, okay. Moving on, okay. Now, we also addressed, I think this is the last slide where I'm actually bringing in information, and then I'm going to be drawing to a close with conclusions and some questions to you, okay? So just about time, we've got about 10 more minutes. We looked at proportions of the various areas which can affect the communication that she's going through, things that she's been talking about at a personal level, communication at a corporate organizational level, on a cultural level, obviously, what the language-based issues are that really need addressing, and what her task, her role, the things that excuse me, the things that she does on a daily basis. How are all these affecting the language that she uses, affecting her communication? And she, once again, we had a very interesting conversation about these, and the fact that I showed her this slide. So this was something that I brought into the process. And I said, how do you feel about this? And she said, you know, I never thought that communication is such a complicated thing. So that was quite funny. And she said that probably the most important for her is the cultural and the corporate, because she's working a lot with British people, French, Spanish, well, actually quite a lot of European countries, and the management in the US is in the US. So quite a lot of different communication styles, a lot of different cultural issues which can come up through the communication that they have, and of course what kind of expectations they have within the company, which was also, so it was the red and the green, which was the most important for her, and to recognize this. What I asked her is what the implications were here for her, and we discussed that. I'd like to move on now to the conclusion, and we're going to look at, yeah. So what was dominant and to what degree? We discussed this. It was the corporate and the cultural, right? So what were the insights and the learnings for her? And I'm just going to bullet point this, okay? What this whole process resulted in was that, for example, specific things, her intonation, her clarity, the speech, the confidence with which she spoke, the body language changed. So there are quite a lot of very specific takeaways for her. She said, and I'm quoting here from my notes here, I have noticed I feel more leader, more conscious that my position is an important role. So she kind of started owning that role with which she's been working in that role for 2 years actually now.
Gabriella, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I can't see it.
No, I'm going to start sharing now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so specifics here, she identified ways that she could be learning in the situations that she's in, so on the job actually, how she could take notes, reflect, etc., when she's actually working. There was also new awareness created on the initial key event preparation. So when she has a key event being, for example, the business review, quarterly report. So when you've got, you know, a big event coming up, and it's not only about the slides, it's not about knowing the slides, it's about knowing, identifying why you're going to say what you say, how you can be influencing, impacting, focusing, for example, on reassuring your boss that everything is okay, whatever the slides say, that we're okay, we're in control, we're moving on, and we're going to make business success by the end of 2021, despite whatever happens in September, October, for example. How do you communicate that? You can't say, oh, Mr. Bradley, Mr. Johnson, whatever, oh, we'll be fine. That's not how you communicate that. But there was a lot of small things which she was able to communicate, and that was a breakthrough for her. Also, to define what her realistic expectations were, and to be able to set relevant, tangible goals to develop her language and her communication skills. Realizing that she did need to focus on structuring what she has to say, have the time to plan these communication issues, to listen more to the people that she was talking with and reflect. And this way she's going to create more presence during the events that she's taking part in, being more sharp so that it's not about digressing, but being much more laser focused on getting the message across to the audience. Also learning to let go, to get advice, to ask for help, and not move into a kind of defensive mode when these sort of issues come up. Taking control of communication-related communication. I couldn't find a better phrase for this. So when she wants to communicate that there might be some language or communication issues, then how to go about that, how to express that, how to say that. For example, she was very nervous. She had a meeting with an Australian lady, and she knew that from another meeting that she had a very strong Australian accent, which I don't. And she said that, what can I do? I said, be transparent. And at the beginning of the conversation, just say, look, I might not understand everything. I'm sorry. I mean, this is how things are. So I might need to ask you to repeat one or two things. Is that okay? And she said it went fine. She maybe had to stop once or twice. But the fact that she stated at the beginning of the conversation, she just felt so much more comfortable, and actually she forgot about it, and the meeting went on fine. So being very aware of where you might need help, that can help and reduce quite a lot of stress. Growing trust, not only in herself, but learning to be more comfortable and actually move from comfortable to confident in communication situations. And she actually did say that she felt that she could be projecting authority, and she moved from being more manager to a leader mindset, which meant not going into detail, not micromanaging everything, not knowing everything, but moving into a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, a more objective area where she could look onto things and only communicate when it was necessarily so that she could be more in that leader role instead of managing everything at the same time and kind of falling apart. And the communication skills that she learned also mirrored this. So this was a huge, big step for her. And actually there were a lot of skills that she learned in her communication that she could transfer into French. So for example, when she was having meetings in French with her team, she noticed that she was much more controlled and her communication was more direct. So instead of having these very, very, I'm not saying emotional, but more subjective sort of communication with her team, jumping from topic to topic, she was much more focused and more focused on getting things done than otherwise where they would get lost in detail in a way. She also learned to listen more, to pull back a little bit. And this way, actually, she got feedback from her team that, wow, that was really good. And the team didn't know why, but she knew this was because she was listening more and not speaking more. So that was a huge, big learning for her. Now, on a scale, I'm going to show you something here. I've got 4 numbers here. And this is the interactive part again. I'd like to ask you what you think these numbers stand for at this point. Okay, any guesses in the chat box? Okay. What do these stand for? If you're a bit aware of coaching, then you might be able to figure it out. I hope so. Okay. Oh, wait, we've got some things coming in. Carrie, can you help, please?
Yeah, I can help. Can you see the chat as well, Gabriella?
No, I don't want to open it up because then I'm going to lose my focus.
Okay. All right. So someone asks, is the screen being shared? Yes, there's a scale at the bottom of the screen, John. I don't know if that's helpful. So we've got a 5 where she felt at the beginning. For self-assessment, a 7, what she aimed for. Motivational level, it's another comment that's come in.
Ah, okay. Okay. Well, actually, yeah. Anything else?
That's all so far.
Right. Okay. So actually, what we have is that 1 being when you start something, and 10 is the ultimate goal. She said she felt regarding her language and communication skills, she felt she was around a 5 when she started working with me. And by the excuse me, by the end of the process, which was, as I said, around 14 hours of work, she moved to a 7, and she said now she knows that a 10 is impossible or not worth aiming for, in that perfection is not helping her as a perfectionist. So for her, an 8 is a very good thing to aim for. And she's almost reached that. So actually, she's very, very pleased with this 7, because there are a lot of breakthrough moments in this. So it might look like a very small development, but actually there were a lot of things along the way which helped her to move that way. Last thing I'm going to be sharing here is something which I call the information disclosure quadrant or matrix, whatever you want. And I'd like you to think of where my client was when we started working together and where she was when we finished. You can see at the top, you've got low and high, and you've got subjective and objective. Now, these refer to the information that she discloses in her communication, okay? So low meaning not too much, high a lot, subjective being subjective, objective, objective. So which quadrant do you think she was in when we started working together, what she had issues with basically, and where she moved to? Okay, we're getting some answers here.
Well, yeah, so for the answers, we've got to begin with high subjective, someone else somewhat low subjective. That's what's coming so far.
Okay. Well, what happened was that she was around here, not at the very right end, but she was subjective, relatively high, because she was meandering all over the place, but not giving all the information, but she was around there, and she actually moved to somewhere around there in the conversations that we had and the way that she started thinking about and working on her communication. And that was a big step for her. So especially moving from the subjective to the objective. Okay, so that was a big step for her. Okay, another thing that could be interesting that we could address, but I'm not coaching anyone here, is where you are and where you want to be, or where you were in the past. So it's got quite a lot of interesting things and very big learnings, I think, for anyone who just tries to look at their own communication in that aspect. And I know I've made this same journey, so I can totally identify with this sort of movement. Okay. Now, I know you've all been sitting here for a reason. You want to know what the questions are, which are so amazing. These are questions actually that I have asked through this process, but of course, not only through this process, but a number of other processes. And they come up at various points in the coaching process. So it's not like a linear checklist that you can ask from a client and then you're going to get these wow results. But they do come up and they do support the client with the thinking that they have around their own communication. What do you want to work on today? This sets the tone. It identifies who's doing what. It means the client is doing the work and it's their decision what they want to work on. And when you put that you into your communication, you're giving them full responsibility. But it also means that you're going to be working together, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be there. They would have a microphone and start talking with themselves, or I don't know. Obviously, you're there to support them on this journey. But from the day one, minute one, if this is the first question you ask, it's going to be like for some learners, it's a bolt of lightning. It's like, well, I haven't thought about that. You know, we'll start thinking, okay, because you're going to be doing the work, you want to identify what you want to work on, not me. The next one is how important, when they come up with an issue or a range of issues, ideas they want to work on, how important is it? You need to identify whether it's important for them, because if actually, well, I don't know. I mean, I know I need to be working on it, but I don't think it's something I need to address at this point. Then you don't really have to work on it. You want to be working on something which on a scale of 1 to 10 is going to be at least a 7 or an 8. Otherwise, there's not enough value, there's not enough need, maybe there's not enough urgency to be working on that issue. So there has to be a pull for the client. Where's the focus? On the content or the language? You want your client to identify what it is they want to be working on. Is it the message or the vehicle itself? The what or the how? And for my client, obviously, it was not about learning more, I don't know, more vocabulary for how to manage meetings, for example, or it wasn't about learning more technical phrases for the industry that she is in. There are those kind of needs, but this was definitely much more about the how. When you see that someone is kind of stuck or you're not making progress, then just being very transparent, very clear, and asking what's missing. Okay. And it's not about what do you need, because they will come up with a lot of things which they don't have. And quite honestly, as a coach, you won't wave your magic wand and say, well, here they are, and now you can start working. In these situations, what do you need might not be a helpful question, because they're going to get more deeper into the issues that they have. But what is missing? Well, I think what is missing is, so in my experience, this sets a more positive tone than what do you need. But with some clients, it's totally okay. So you have to figure it out for yourself. This is what I've noticed anyway. You can also be asking this sort of thing. What other issues are we not addressing? So you can be very blunt. You can be very, very specific about, look, I hear something which we're not talking about, okay? So if you want to help them to move forward, what else is there in the pipeline that we should be working on? How useful, relevant is this work now for you? You want them to clarify where they are on their learning journey. You can ask this at the end or in the middle of a coaching process, or in the middle or the end of a specific session. It's good feedback for you, but also for them to reflect on how much they have achieved and what still needs working on. If you've been working on presentation skills, for example, you could have this sort of thing. How will your presentation be different after today? Let your client, let your learner summarize the learning. It's not your job to be summarizing for them. That's been a big learning for me in my process, in my learning as a coach, that I don't have to do all that work. The coachee, the client can do that. And usually they come up with amazing little gems of what is really important for them, how it has affected them. And they're going to come up with much more depth than you could, because you're always an outsider looking onto the coaching process, onto what the client is doing, but they're actually living through it. It's their own internal journey, which they're going to be reflecting on. Also, you want to look at how getting that feedback from others, right? So how will others know that your communication has changed? How will you know? You can it depends how you want to be framing this, so that the achievement and the effort made is going to have that sort of impact, not only on them, but looking at organization or at least team level, and there are going to be a lot of benefits. That's why you can also ask for feedback at the end of a process or after 2 or 3 months to get feedback from their team, what has changed in terms of communication and language. I think one but last slide, which is, where are you on this scale? Now, this is an interesting scale as it is, but there are actually 2 labels. And I'd like you to think about this for a minute and just throw in your ideas, okay? And I know we're over time, I'm sorry, but I think this is something that we can be thinking about together. Which one are you? You want to make your teaching better, or you want to create a better learning environment? Just throw it in the chat box. Okay. Something's coming up here. I'll try to pull it up. Okay. Learning, keep the focus on the learner, blue. Okay. Lovely. Both. Aha, both. Yeah. Okay. So we've got these here. Lovely. Learning. Okay. I'm very pleased with these answers. I was hoping for this. Yes, absolutely. So we want to make the learning environment better. Okay, so we want our learners to be in a context, in a learning context environment, which is going to support them with their efforts, their endeavors. And of course, we want our teaching to be better, but the big question is how, and we can achieve that by creating a better learning environment. So actually we are killing 2 birds with 1 stone by creating a better learning environment, and of course coaching can support that. And the next thing, I think the one but last thing, is what are your steps forward? Once again, I'd like you to throw it into the chat box. Maybe not 4 things, you can do that as a home assignment if you want to, but what's the one thing that you're going to do differently after this talk that I gave here now? What's the one thing that you've learned or you'd like to focus on in the future? Okay, let's have a look here. Use more tools to show different aspects. Yeah, definitely. I think tools are amazing, especially if they're like just a blank or just visual input, then they can do a lot of things. Thank you, Kathy. Ask more questions about desired goals. Okay, thank you, Aniko. Okay, definitely. Talk about leadership attributes. Okay, deeper curiosity, to take time to explore and give the client space. Yes, absolutely. I'm always about, time and space. That's what the whole coaching process is about. If you can support your client in giving them the time and space to reflect, talk through things, then it's going to have amazing results and incredible impact. Thank you very much for that. And we've come to the end of, we've still got one more. Sorry about that. Your colorful framing was amazing and all telling for the client. Thank you. Okay. So basically, we've come to the end of our journey today. And thank you very much for being here. I know we've run over time a little bit, but I do hope it has been worth your while, and looking forward to any comments, any feedback about the journey that we've gone through today, and also looking forward to seeing you at all of our events in the future. We've got an amazing one coming up August 26th, and also September 21st, we've got a surprise presenter who's going to give an amazing talk. He's one of the people that I really, really look up to, and he was one of the people that started me also on my language coaching journey. So it's going to be a big honor to have him on our experts series in September on the 21st. So have that in your calendars, definitely. So what are your takeaways? Anything from today? Okay, informative, engaging. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else? Was there anything missing for you? That's something that I'd ask. And of course, any questions, if you've got any questions, and you can definitely unmute. I'm going to stop sharing now, okay? And thank you very much for being here. So you can unmute and just ask if there's anything that you'd like to ask at this point. Or
I think it's more of a comment that I think the client that you had was very courageous, and you know, and what she got out of it because of her courage and her sincerity of improving, she not only got language aspects, but she got professional, and she got all kinds of other tools.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability
it
for our
does.
clients to come forth and
Absolutely.
show that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a good observation. It does, and she actually told me that. Well, you know, at the end of the process, she said, well, you know, in the beginning, I thought, well, I don't know what this is going to be about. I don't know how this is going to impact. And so she had these huge big question marks in her head. And as we moved along, it just got into this very, very deep process where so many things, I mean, communication is about self. And to go through that journey, it's such a wonderful thing, you know. I always have that feeling of supporting growth, and it's always about growth, and they always move forward so much. So it's been really amazing. Any other questions that you might have? I don't know, either about this process, or I don't know, anything that I mentioned which was not clear. I don't know. Everything was so clear. Okay. Any other questions about just language coaching in general, or business coaching, business language coaching? I don't know, because you're still here, which is amazing. I've got your attention. Anything, or if you want to ask in chat in private, I'm also happy to. But okay, Aniko, is it typical for multinational companies to employ language coaches in such situations? I think it's getting more and more typical. In my experience, it's something which is now happening because people are more aware of what language coaching is. But of course, ILCA's mission is to create the awareness around language coaching so that people do know about it and what it is and how it can support. So I think, yes, so you have to be very clear how it's different to teaching and training. I think that's the big trick that you have to explain. I mean, when I'm working with my clients, I always, with the organizations that I work with, I explain very clearly with a PDF, you know, what it is not, and be very, you know, transparent in how you work with your clients. So that usually does the trick. So yeah, thank you. Okay. Anything else, or are we okay? I know we're terribly over time, but I thought I'd go into details a little bit. Are we okay? Yeah, okay. Definitely going to stop recording. So thank you for being here. And